And hello, everyone, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. We are excited because we have a great show today.
My man.
There he is. We are
My
bringing keys to the city. Trevor Keys, my good buddy, my good friend. And look, we have a lot to talk about today because if you follow this channel, I talk at nauseam about the New York Jets. But look, let's be honest. There's two teams in New York. I also like to cover the Giants. I do a lot of mock drafts with the Giants. And let's be honest, it's been a pretty interesting training camp for both teams. I know every Jet fan had a heart attack on Friday night, although it's a little bit better today after the prognosis with Zach Wilson's good. But there's so much coming out of Giants camp. And Trevor, I know you have a lot of thoughts on that. So again, thank you so much for joining us here on the program today. And also follow the show on Facebook, Keys to the City. Make sure you check that out if you are a huge Giant fans, because him and his brother, they bring you amazing Giants content. I would say
we try to be
basis,
even though it's a struggle to talk about the New York Giants for the past, as you know, the New York Jets and the New York Giants both have the same record in the past 5 years. So it's been rough times for us New York Jet and Giant fans. But I am thank you for having me, my man. I greatly appreciate it.
Hey, tell everyone, therapy costs money. What we do is free. Like, this is therapy. And, like, you save a lot of money just venting to us. So, again, guys, the chat is wide open. If you'd like to comment on the video, we will get to your questions throughout this. So make sure you comment on this video. Again, thanks so much for joining us. So we dive right into it with the Giants. And like the Jets, it's all about the quarterback. I mean, we're in the NFL. It's all about the quarterback. And me and you have talked at nauseum. You knew my opinions about Daniel Jones coming into the season, but how concerned are you as a Giant fan with the reports of the struggles and Daniel Jones? Now, one thing I will also preface today, that viral video of that incompletion at the Giants practice, I think that was way overblown. They even came out and said that was the wrong route. But still, it just seems like there's a lot of negativity around Daniel Jones, and we haven't even gotten to week one.
I'm glad you said that, because all I saw
what are your thoughts
on Twitter to answer. Look, we already know what Daniel Jones is. I mean, as a Giant fan, deep down, I want the New York Giants and Daniel Jones to succeed, because if Daniel Jones succeeds, the New York Giants are winning division titles and competing for championships. I'm not going to be that type of fan that just wants to see him struggle. I don't want that. But what we've seen in the first 3 years, or going into year 4, Noel, is he's just, like Colin Cowherd best said, he's a quarterback from Duke. I was never high on this guy. I wish my brother had this recorded when he drafted. I had one of those meltdowns. I never have draft meltdowns. This was the one time that I had a meltdown saying, why? Why did they do this? This guy was not a top 10 pick at the time. He was a quarterback that was average in college. All we've heard is, oh, he's smart, he's a hard worker. Okay, well, why hasn't the hard work, and the smarts translated into the NFL? Sometimes you have it, and sometimes you just don't have it. Just look at guys like Josh Allen. I know it took him a year or two to get really going, but look at Joe Burrow, look at Justin Herbert. When you know you got a franchise, Patrick Mahomes, when you know you have a franchise quarterback, you just know nowadays. It's not going to be like back in the 90s, like with Brady, and Brady was a 6th round. That's not good. If that happens, okay, then somebody should go run for get a lotto ticket, because nowadays that's not happening. Either you know it or you just don't. And Giant fans, we could sit here and say whatever and argue, oh, Daniel Jones is this, Daniel Jones is that. Right now, he is what he is. He's fighting for his career. And if he doesn't succeed, then Nolan, he's going to be a perennial backup for the rest of his career.
Well, this brings me to my next question for the Giants. And I did like the Tyrod Taylor signing. I think he has been one of the more undervalued quarterbacks that we've had in the league over the last 10 years. But I know we talked about this at the end of the draft, where I basically saying, look, I would have taken a shot at Malik Willis or one of these kids in the third. So you had a quarterback as seemingly a backup plan. One of the things that came out this week, now for me, it wasn't super huge news, because Connor Hughes, who's now reporting for SNY, was the Jets beat reporter for The Athletic, basically was revisiting this story about Gettleman with Saquon Barkley and not trading out. The one thing I will say about this too is it just feels like, as Trevor just, I think, step aside for a quick moment, but one of the things it does feel like with this team now, at least around Daniel Jones, and I've seen around this offseason, is they've put together a competent front office, and it feels like that at least there's a sense of somewhat of direction right now. But the one criticism I had was not really addressing a backup plan for Daniel Jones. Do you think that's going to hurt them this season by not either drafting a rookie or not being more aggressive to go out and try to get another better veteran backup to push Daniel Jones?
To be honest, I don't mind the pickup of Tyrod because he's been a guy that we've seen. I mean, he's been a Pro Bowler. He's led the Buffalo Bills to the playoffs before. He's had some unfortunate luck in the past couple of years being Cleveland with Baker and then losing his job there. And then the Chargers. I mean, it's unfortunate, but he's a pro's pro. He's played this game. I would take it. I would take him over anybody right now. I'll take him over anybody in the draft. I mean, I know people will say Malik Willis. I just don't see it with that. I feel like the Giants are going to try to do everything they can to give him a chance. But I think Tyrod Taylor, to be honest, is not the worst option. Maybe, possibly, just maybe if it's both are really, really in like that bad struggling times, maybe they do go out and get Jimmy G or something like that. That's just a name you've been hearing. I know Giant fans are going, oh, no, not Jimmy G. Go nuts. But realistically, I don't mind the Tyrod Taylor signing because, like I said, he's been in this league long enough. He's a veteran. He knows the offense. He's smart enough. He's got the dual threat ability too. If he's whoever's the best guy coming out, I want the best guy playing. Whether that's Daniel Jones or whether that's Tyrod Taylor, I want the best guy playing week 1 against the Tennessee Titans. And to be honest, that's all I want. And if it is Tyrod, we're running with Tyrod.
And again, guys, they're on this episode, but one of the things about Giant Camp that I found really interesting, there seems to be a lot of fights going on in camp, and it seems like there's a lot of competitiveness, which I think is good because it did seem like in some years past, like, I even complained about this in Jet Camp. There wasn't a lot. It didn't seem like everyone was fighting and getting competitive and all of that. But one of the biggest things coming into this Giant season is, and luckily I think the Daniel Jones discussion has shielded this player slightly, and we mentioned him just a few seconds ago. Obviously, the success of your quarterback is a huge impact on how the success of your team. But for Saquon this year, how important is it for him to bounce back and maybe not even be a Pro Bowl running back and finishes a full season with this team?
I mean, if the good thing to have is a solid a guy like in the backfield. We saw what he can do in 2019, being an all-pro and being one of the most historical rookie seasons we ever seen. Hasn't been that so far, but just like Daniel Jones, Saquon's working for his career too. Whether he's going to be a New York Giant come next season or he's going to be somewhere else, he's fighting for the same situation as Daniel Jones. And he's, from what the reports have seen, from what the video has shown on Instagram, Twitter, and all that, it looks like Saquon's got that burst back. And I noticed it also in last week's game. I know he only played the first drive, but that toss play, it looked like he had that burst. He wasn't hesitant. He saw the hole. He read the hole, and bam. Even on the little out route, it just looked like it looked like Saquon was back. Now, I'm not going to go nuts and say, oh, yeah, he's back. He's 100%. We don't know how the season's going to play out, but right now, all I needed to see is that if he still has that burst back like he had in 2019, that's what I like. And the other thing is, just like Daniel Jones, and I'll say it again, Saquon Barkley is fighting for his career, not just as a New York Giant, but if he has another struggling season, you're going to use it. What are we going to know? What is Saquon going to be? What we remember Saquon as? That's the question that we'll ask. And Dave Gettleman's legacy will just be completed as one of the worst regimes in New York football Giant history.
Well, it's also funny you mentioned it too, because it kind of also feels with Saquon, he really has to show too, because he's now has a coaching staff and now a front office, an organization that hasn't overvalued the running back position. So Saquon, I think, is really going to have to show up and show out in this camp. And before I get into the skilled positions, which I think are very important, like, look, you know me, I love talking about them in the draft. I always talk about them ad nauseum. And look, I've been a dead horse. I've gone into way too many fights about Mekhi Becton on the Jets talk. But let's focus on the Giants here. So one of the big issues that came out of the Mew go down was in a walking boot afterward. You're looking at this offensive line where it's clear that you feel as a Giant fan and as an expert that they have the bookends figured out. You feel Evan Neal at the very least will be a solid right tackle. You feel pretty good with Andrew Thomas. But now you lose Shane Lemieux. I'm not exactly sure how long the injury is going to be. I know he's a bit nicked up, but how concerned are you about the interior of this offensive line, especially now that the depth's already getting tested? Because I believe also the saw that last week, and I think he was the only depth pick, I believe, on day 3 of the draft for the Giants. So how important is it for this team to not only develop chemistry on the interior, but are you concerned about the lack of depth?
I mean, yeah, we've been talking about the big thing has been the depth on the New York Giants offensive line. But one thing is injuries, game of football, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. You just got to try to fine tune and work with what you got. I know the Giants are kind of limited right now, but like you said, drafting Evan Neal, having Andrew Thomas have like a stellar second season, sophomore season last year is a big deal. If they can just, and that's one of the big talking points for the New York Giants since their Super Bowl days, my man, is their offensive line. The New York Giants, if you know anything about the New York Football Giants, the history of the New York Giants, it's always been running the football, play action, winning in the trenches. Whether that's offensive line, D-line, it's always been that way, kind of like the Pittsburgh Steelers. The same blueprint, that's what it's been going forever. The Giants' offensive line, as we know, has been god-awful for the past couple of years. And you can look at the ranks, PFF, anything you want to look at. The New York Giants are usually been ranked at the bottom of that league. That's why they give up a lot of sacks. That's why there's a lot of turnovers, because you get a lot of strip sacks, fumbles, and you don't have, and like Saquon last year, he was behind the backfield it felt like every 2 seconds. It felt like every 2 seconds, every time that he got the ball, there was 2 or 3 defenders, bam, just like that. All I need to see is if there's some improvement. All I've been saying as a New York Giant fan recently, I just want to see some sort of direction. I just want to see them going in the right direction, because it's been too long. I know I'm going to take a shot at you right now because you're a Jet fan. The Jets have been a bad franchise for some time now. So, and maybe they look like they're going in the right direction too. We'll see what happens with Zach Wilson. But the thing is, as a New York Giant, because they are the New York Giants, they're one of the well-known franchises in all of the NFL. Now, have they been in the past 10 years? No, they've been a laughingstock. We'll put them in the Browns. We'll put them in the Jacksonville category. This is a team that has been highly respected. They need to get back to the way things were. And right now, if I can see some sort of improvement in the offensive line, that's all I want to see. If Andrew Thomas can take that next step, which is all pro type, and Evan Neal can solidify the 2 bookends for the next 10 to 12 years, you know how valuable offensive linemen are in the NFL nowadays. If you could get those 2 and work with the interior, I know Lemieux's been dealing with an injury. Feliciano's been dealing with an injury. If you could get those guys back before the season, this will be a whole new look offensive line. And to me especially, would be a much more improved offensive line than what it was in the past couple of years.
Well, we've also talked about this too. Is like you need to build for your division. And one thing about the NFC East is you can say that they might not have the most talented quarterbacks or the best offenses, but when you look at trench play, I mean, Dallas front 7, the Eagles front 7, Washington's front 7, and even their offensive lines are incredibly talented. So if you're the Giants, you do need to improve that interior offensive line. And I do think it is refreshing that you're seeing a front office now that addressed that in the draft and really address it with their first 2 picks. And I kind of laugh whenever I did a Giants mock draft. Everyone's saying like, oh, like they'll pass on offensive linemen in the first round. I said, there's no way they can pass that. I even thought they double dip at one point. But
to be honest, I thought the Giants in that I think we talked about it too. I thought the Giants were going to go in that situation. I thought they were going to go 1 offensive line, and then I thought they were going to go either Sauce or Stingley if available at 5 or 7. But the Jets and Texans back-to-back took them. So they went with the next best thing, and one of the most important needs, they needed a defensive lineman. They got Kayvon Thibodeau, which was, I mean, those 2 picks as a Giant fan, I know people like, oh, well, they got Wan'Dale Robinson. I think Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be a stud. I think he's perfect for today's NFL. But getting those 2 guys, Kayvon and Neal, 2 of the best players in this entire draft at 5 and 7, didn't have to move, didn't have to trade back. You got your 2 guys. As a Giant fan, it seems like we got competency in the higher ups now.
Well, it is nice too for the Giants, and there's a couple negatives I want to talk about in a little bit. But like one of the big positives from camp that I've seen is Evan Neal has had struggles. And look, it's an offensive line. It's a big adjustment, especially for him. He's been bouncing around the last couple of years. Played left tackle Alabama. They're moving him to the right tackle. So again, guys, like you have to give some patience on the offensive line. We saw with his counterpart Andrew Thomas, struggle first year. Everyone wanted him out, and then of course now he looks like a staple for the next 10 years. But one of the most exciting picks has to be Kayvon. And so far in camp, he seems to be living up to the hype right now. But is there an expectation, like even if he makes an impact, but he gets like 9 sacks, is that still going to be a bit of a disappointment? Are you a little bit concerned with the expectations with Kayvon? Because again, this is a defense that they have some nice pieces. I actually like the Giants defense a lot better than a lot of people. I think the offense is going to be the big concern. But for example, if Kayvon starts this season off hot and then they start, focusing the coverage on him, focusing attention on him, especially with the pass protection, do you feel like Giant fans, like if he comes out and has 9 sacks this year and has a productive season, do you think that's good enough for what Giants are expecting? Or do you think,
I mean, take that short? Yeah, absolutely. If he could come in and have just sort of that impact, like that Chase Young rookie season impact, 9.5 sacks. I mean, what are Giant fans going to expect? To come in and have TJ Watt 22.5 sacks in the first season and be like, yeah, we got the greatest player in the world? No. I mean, it's a rookie, but this guy is going to come in, his personality that I love, and I know people were knocking him for it throughout the whole draft process, and people said, why did the Giants draft him? I don't know. Let's look at the history of Giants edge rushers, the personalities too. Lawrence Taylor, he was a pretty good player, to say the least, big personality. Michael Strahan, he was a pretty good player. O.C. Umenyiora, Justin Tuck. What do they have all in common? Big personalities. And guess what? They were slam dunks. They delivered in the big blue. I'm okay with that. To me, I thought this guy was the best player in the draft. I would have drafted him number 1 if I was Jacksonville. I think he's just going to be a special, special talent. And I think getting Don Wink Martindale, it could be massive for him because he loves to bring a lot of pressures, a lot of blitzes. I think that's the right guy for him. The key to me is going to be for him to succeed as well. Dexter Lawrence and your big guy, your former guy that I don't know how you feel about him, but big Leonard Williams as well. You can get those 2 going. And from what I've seen and what I've read in training camp, the defense has been dominating. And if that defensive line can just do what they have to do, which is get to the quarterback, and if Big Dex and Leonard Williams can do their job, then that's going to take a hell of a lot of pressure off of Kayvon. I don't want to see him too much in pass coverage. I know he's athletic enough, but I want to see him do his thing, which is getting to the quarterback. He has an incredible first step, an incredible burst off the line. Yet let him do his thing. And I think with him and Easy, I think that, like we just talked about Neal and Thomas, if Easy could stay healthy, and he had a pretty solid rookie season. Not a lot of people talk about his rookie season because we're fascinated with other rookies, but he had a pretty good year. If those 2 can do their part, I mean, the Giants have 2 of the most important positions locked up for a long time. The defensive line, edge rushers, and the offensive tackles. And those are 2 things the Giants need to get back to. But Kayvon, if he can have 9.5, 10 sacks, I'd be ecstatic. I mean, the people that think that's going to be a bad season, I don't know what they're expecting then.
Well, I think the Micah Parsons rookie season throws that off there. But
I get it.
But one of the things too, like that, I just look at this whole Giants team and like maybe I'm in the minority here, but I really feel if both defenses play up to their potential, the Jets and the Giants could both be top 12 in the NFL. But it also comes down to their offenses. And the one thing I would be slightly concerned about this Giant defense is how often are they going to be on the field? How often are they going to have to get back in there after a 3 and out? So you do worry, especially later in games, like Kayvon's best attribute is rushing the passer. But if you're down 2 touchdowns and the team's just running the ball down your throat, that does hurt the impact he could have on the game. And talking about the weapons, We were talking about Wendell Robinson having a really good camp right now.
Yep.
What are your thoughts about the wide receiver position? Because I've been seeing a lot of mixed reaction because you have, on one hand, Wendell Robinson looking really good, Kadarius Toney having a strong camp. But then on the other end, you're having Kenny Galladay struggling, and then you also have George Pickens going out there and having a great game in his first start. And I did see a lot of reaction, not just from Giant fans, but for a lot of people like Packers, like teams that were on the clock technically, that could have potentially drafted him, going, why did we not take Pickens in the second round? So just would love your thoughts about the wide receiver position, and who do you think is going to have the biggest impact on this season for the Giants?
I tell you what, I'd much rather be the Giants receiving core than the Chicago Bears receiving core. That's for certain. My goodness gracious. My boy Justin Fields.
If Fields makes it out like this season, if he plays every single game and doesn't end the season in a buyback, like I almost want to give him a freaking award.
Give him the MVP.
No, like I think it's malpractice what they've been doing. I've even been arguing that the Jets should trade Denzel Mims for Tevin Jenkins to get one problem for another problem. But it is amazing how bad it is right now. And I do think the Giants receiving core is a funny core because do I think they have a true number one? No. But do they have a lot
of like scat backs, like those Jalen Waddle types, fast, quick guys that you could put in the slot and just let them get out into space. Tyreek Hill type players. I'm saying that they're going to be Tyreek Hill, but Wendell Robinson, you get him in the backfield with a Kadarius Toney, with the way Dable likes to run that offense, a lot of audibles, a lot of motions, a lot of sweeps. You get those guys in the space. I think Toney could be electrifying. He just got to stay on the field. I know he's been dealing with an injury, an undisclosed injury throughout. Didn't play in the preseason last week, or I think it was a knee actually. But Wendell Robinson, I heard he's been electrifying. Galladay's the big question mark because before he came to the Giants, he was one of the better end zone presence in the game, the deep threat presence. You throw him the ball. I know he had Stafford, but he was always a guy that you can rely on in the red zone. And there you go. Giants, we know what he did last year. He did nothing. Andrew Thomas had more touchdowns than Kenny Galladay and Kadarius Toney, to just say what the Giants season was last year. Galladay's the big question mark. That's what it comes down to. Not having a true tight end as well. Hopefully the kid Daniel Bellinger can really take lead of that role. But Galladay, the big contract, it just looks like he hasn't gotten into his footing. He just never has gotten off to that first step. Where Wendell Robinson, I think he's going to have a huge impact offensively. I think Sterling Shepard, if he's a guy that if he could stay healthy, Sterling Shepard is one of the better slot receivers in football. And then Kadarius Toney, get him the ball. You have players that you get into space. You team that up with Galladay, throwing over the top. That could be scary. That's what I don't get, is that the Giants do have weapons. They're not here saying, oh, they're like the Chicago Bears, where maybe they got they got Montgomery, they got Cole Kmet, they got Mooney. But I feel like the Giants have more weapons than that, and they can use that. I just haven't seen it put all together. And the most important thing is they can't stay healthy. They just don't stay healthy. I don't understand it. But to me, having Saquon as well, that's another weapon that you use in the passing game. You have a dual threat back in the backfield that you can use as well. My biggest thing is, can Galladay get it going? And hopefully Daniel Bellinger can really take lead of that tight end role, because the Giants like to have great tight ends. If we've seen in the past from Super Bowl years, they love to use the tight ends in their offense, and the Giants need to get back to that. Thank God poor Evan Ingram is now in Jacksonville dealing with the drops.
Yeah, like I think one of the things has got to be the MetLife turf. Like I know everyone hates the grass at
everybody
MetLife, but I think
hates
that's part of it. Yeah, but like it's because it's both the Jets and the Giants. Like it always seems like there's some weird injury that's happening.
I know.
But sticking with the tight end position, Bellinger is an interesting prospect because now, like one of the biggest misconceptions for me, I think, in the NFL is that Buffalo doesn't utilize the tight end position. They have all the fancy toys on the outside, but Knox has been a very good underrated tight end, and you could see Josh Allen. They really relied on the tight end.
I love
in the red zone. So with Bellinger now, how big of an impact does he have to make? Now, I think one of the good things for him, like we've been talking about, is so much attention's on Daniel Jones, so much attention's on Saquon, so much attention's on all these receivers that he's allowed to just kind of fly under the radar. So how big of an impact do you expect him to have on this team? And is it a lot to put on his plate being such a young player that he has to basically step into a starting role on the New York Giants and basically be the security blanket for Daniel Jones?
Well, I think that's just in general now from the tight end position, because look at the tight ends all of a sudden. Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, Mark Andrews, Pitts, Fairmouth. You got a bunch of tight ends that are slowly just becoming that much more valuable, where about 5-6 years ago, tight ends were at the bottom of the value. Now tight ends, the passing game, they're just as valuable as having a receiver too. And these guys are so athletic, and everything that we heard coming out of the draft or pre-draft reports is that Bellinger, a great route runner, great hands. He can also be in the blocking game. That's what the Giants need. A pass catcher. I mean, they needed a pass catcher for some time at the tight end position, but having a pass catcher like that, utilizing him into the passing game, can go a long way. Just look at the success. The Buffalo Bills, you just said it. Dawson Knox. I mean, Dawson Knox had a hell of a season last year if he doesn't get injured. I mean, he was huge for Josh Allen in that Buffalo Bills. Kelsey, already know what he does. Mark Andrews, what he does for Lamar. It's like a blanket. I used to say, we always like to use the term man's best friend is a dog. Well, a quarterback's best friend is a tight end. And I do mean that. And you see with Mahomes, the connection that he has with Kelsey, Waller and Carr, Kittle, and, well, I guess now it's Trey Lance. We'll see how that pans out. Pitts, I mean, maybe it's just because of the value that tight ends have become in this game now, that the pressure is mounting for the Giants to hopefully have Bellinger be that guy for them. But I think he's going to have a nice role, like a Kevin Boss type role. Not really a lot of talk about, but guess what? He's going to make the plays when you need him. He's going to get the first downs that you need him. And he's going to get the big blocks that when you need him.
Right. And I think he could fit that role very well. And Knox, like when we talk about great tight ends, like Knox is barely mentioned, but Knox had 9 touchdown catches last year in 14 games. I mean, talk about fantasy value, but still,
I had him in fantasy last year.
So let me guess, you probably finished top 3 in your league, right? So
in one of my leagues, I missed the playoffs by the last game of the season because I lost on like a final drive, and then I got to the semifinals and lost by like 2 points because Devontae Parker gave me a big fat goose egg in that Monday Night Football game against the Saints. So I was close.
I have ruled like I have to do terrible Jets puns for my team names. I already got the first one for this year. I know I'm stealing it all. I know I'm stealing this. I didn't come up with this, but throwing bombs and banging moms, that's got to be one of my team names. And then I think the best one I ever did all time, the top 2 had to be Forgetting Brandon Marshall
wow.
Or no, I Miss Fat Rex Ryan. Like, cause like seriously, I love Rex, but he lost weight and the Jets were terrible. Like, he's never been the same coach since he lost weight. Like, look, I'm glad he's healthy.
Oh yeah, of course.
But maybe he should have had some of those cheeseburgers at Hofstra. I'm just saying, like,
should have went to Arthur Ave a couple more times. Went to Little Italy a little more.
Yeah, I know. So, but it is very interesting too, because one of the big things about training camp is, I think one of the biggest misconceptions around the NFL is the offseason's over. I think a lot of teams are still moving pieces, figuring out roster spots. Has there been someone in this camp or in this preseason that's really stuck out to you this year that you think is going to make this Giant roster? And is there a veteran player or a player that's more well-known that you think it's going to be hard for the Giants to somehow keep on the 53 when they finally get to the cutdown day at the end of training camp?
Honestly, I just want to see the Giants have the best people on the team. I don't have a specific player. I just want to see the best 53 that are going to give us the best chance to win each and every Sunday. And the Giants have, as we've seen the past 10 years, it's just been a complete struggle. I just want to see growth. I just want to see a direction, and I just want to see some positivity. That's my most important thing as a New York Giant. I don't have a specific player, but a guy that I really am excited to watch that's a current Giant, is not going to lose a job, looks like he'll be a captain, is Xavier McKinney, the X-Man. I think he's going to go into that all-pro type mode. He was last year, had 5 interceptions, over almost 100 tackles last year. He was one of the better safeties that not many people talked about for good reason. The Giants were just, there was no reason to talk about him other than if they were running quarterback sneaks and back-to-back plays. But Xavier McKinney, to me, I think he's going to be a stud for them. My biggest concern also for the Giants is not the offensive line and the health. It's the secondary. I don't like the Adoree Jackson being the number 1. I think Darnay Holmes he's been delivering from the reports that we've been seeing on Twitter. He's had the greatest camp of all time. I think Aaron Robinson, he might be a guy that might get cut, because I was watching him last week getting burnt in New England. He's getting burnt in camp. I don't know if he's going to be around. Julian Love, I think he can take a next step, but I don't like I'm not a big fan of not having a true number one. I think losing Bradbury for obvious reasons is not ideal because of what Dave Gettleman put the Giants in, and Joe Shane, look, had to make tough decisions. I know people say, why we get rid of him? Why do we do this? Well, because the Giants were in salary cap hell. Literally, they had to do what they had to do to get back to some sort of above instead of being below. That's why Dave Gettleman, I mean, anybody that thinks he's not the worst GM in the history of New York sports, and I mean, it'd be hard to argue.
Mike McCagney and John Idzik,
I get that as a Jeff fan.
12.
I don't know, man. I mean, him, the decision making, the signings, just where now with Joe Shane coming in, this new regime, what they had to deal with, having to cut Bradbury, you couldn't even trade him to get a draft pick or something. You had to cut him, and on top of it, your top cornerback just went to your division rival in Philly. So my big concern is I want to see how this cornerback, the depth in the cornerbacks, I want to see how they pan out going into the season. I think the second safeties, losing Peppers. I know he dealt with injuries. I was a big fan of Peppers, of Jabril Peppers. Loved him in college. Wanted the Giants to draft him when he first came out. Eventually,
they got him for $70 million. It's like the same with the Jets. Like, I love Jamal Adams, but do I love Jamal Adams for $72 million, or would I rather get all those draft picks for him? You have to put a price tag on position.
Yeah, the value of safeties it's not really high on the bar for people unless you're the Pittsburgh Steelers or teams like that. But that's a player that I would really want to see. Hopefully, the Giants can really build around defensively with McKinney and that defensive line. See how the linebacking core goes. I mean, Blake Martinez dealing with the ACL. This is just, to me, is just, can we have some sort of direction?
Right.
That's my biggest thing for the New York Giants coming into the 2023 season, Nolan.
Yeah, Greeny Green agrees with you. Gettleman was the
I'm taking it he's a Jet fan with the Greeny.
Yeah,
Green.
I mean, it's a great name though. But yeah, guys, in the chat, who's the worst GM in New York history? Well, let's stick with football because I mean, if we did New York history, we'll get a bunch of Mets comments in here too. Although I think it's more the Will Ponds. But yeah, is it Gettleman? Is it McCagnon? Or is it John Idzik? You know, I mean, people forget about Idzik.
I forgot about John. He was a disaster.
Well, that Idzik, the Idzik 12 might go down as one of, if not the worst.
You got somebody. That's what I'm hoping that the Giants have. Like Joe Douglas. Right. Joe Douglas has looked like he's hit a home run. What a great draft. Zach Wilson is the ultimate to be determined. We're going to see if he delivers. I know that this injury is a setback, and that can hurt a lot because you need reps from a kid like this that is very young and still inexperienced.
I've been arguing that for weeks now, but it is interesting, too, that you bring that up because with that whole situation, I just kind of wonder just with the whole that to me is the biggest thing about the injury is just the lack of reps for Wilson right now. And I know, like, Joe Flacco for a week or two, I'm fine with. Like, if it's longer than that, I'd maybe trade for Jimmy G.
That's why I say, Jimmy G is a possibility. But that's why I say the Giants and the Jets are in. I mean, we could be talking realistically next year from now that both quarterbacks, the current quarterbacks, I don't know if Daniel Jones is going to be this. Could be gone. I know it's crazy to say even with Zach Wilson because he's only been year 2. But with the way quarterbacks have drastically changed this league and are flying up the boards of just dominating, taking games over, and the value that they bring. If Zach Wilson has another struggling season, Daniel Jones, to me, I think we got a clear picture of what Daniel Jones is. I don't see him ever becoming the guy that people were hoping for. I'm hoping that he becomes it. I don't see it happening. There's still little things that rookies that are making that still eyeing receivers, just not making smart decisions. And I'm not talking about the throw out of bounds that everybody thought it was an awful throw because that would have been a pick 6. And then you would have ripped Daniel Jones' head off even more if he threw that ball and it got picked. He made the right decision. And Zach Wilson's the same thing. The way quarterbacks are moving so fast and how this league is growing so fast and developing these quarterbacks, like a Tua, all these guys, Zach Wilson, Tua, Daniel Jones, they're all in the kind of the same boat because we can't wait and sit there. And especially in a conference, luckily the Giants are in the NFC and not the AFC, because that AFC, specifically you guys, you're going to have to deal with Josh Allen and company for the next 10 to 12 years. So that's going to be a struggle right there off the bat. For me, the Giants, it's more of a wide open NFC with the exception of the Rams, the Bucks, the Niners, Packers, we don't know. And no, I'm not saying the Dallas Cowboys, because the Dallas Cowboys are the Dallas Cowboys. They all have high expectations, but nothing
No,
happens.
I agree with you. Like I said, like I do this game. I said, like, name the top 5 QBs in the AFC. You have a hard time picking the 5. Like, who fits in the top 5? I say pick the top 5 NFC quarterbacks. You go Brady, Stafford, Rodgers, and then it's like,
maybe
Murray,
maybe Dak, Kyler,
maybe Dak. Yeah, I don't. I'm not the biggest.
You can't sit here
fan.
you can't sit here and be like that. But the AFC, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
These quarterbacks are, especially in the AFC. You just said it. Allen, Burrow, Herbert, Mahomes, Lamar. We'll see what happens with Deshaun Watson. He's still a young quarterback. There's so many great quarterbacks in that. I mean, the AFC West alone is dominated by unbelievable quarterback play. So the way quarterbacks are just changing this game day by day, you have to hope you hit on it. And right now, the reason why the Giants, maybe one of the main reasons, I know the offensive line has been awful. I get that. It's been one of the worst in the league for a long time. One of the main reasons why they've been bad is because they just don't have a great quarterback at the helm right now.
Absolutely. And guys, if you have any questions, make sure you put it in the chat. We'll get to your questions as soon as you can. Would love to hear from you guys as always. And the other interesting thing too, and I think you strike it pretty good with the quarterbacks, is it's not just about getting a rookie quarterback, but it's at least being an appealing place if a veteran wants to move. And I've said that about the Jets, and I think I'm in the minority if their roster looks good, which I think it will this year.
It definitely looks a lot better. It's definitely more improved from what it was a year ago.
Now, I might be in the minority here, and I know people will think I'm crazy, but I would not be. I would let Joe Douglas pick another quarterback. Now everyone's going to say, "Oh, wait a minute, he picked Zach Wilson in the draft." Blah blah blah. But you look at that draft. Trevor Lawrence was the #1 pick, but then it was basically
I would have taken
your poison.
I would have taken Fields personally,
and I get that, and I think Zach. I think if you put them in the system, high end, Zach probably fit this system a little bit better than Fields. But I mean, the one thing I keep getting annoyed with is Mac Jones, and everyone talking how Mac Jones. I really think Mac Jones is coming back down to earth this year. You saw it the last 4 weeks of last season, and like, look, the Jets. Zach Wilson has no excuses. They didn't change the OC. They didn't change the head coach. They didn't change the GM. He was the only second-year quarterback that has all those the same going into year 2 in an improved roster.
That's why I would say out of all the quarterbacks of the year 2 quarterbacks that just got drafted, I would say Trey Lance faces the most pressure. And you could call me listen. You could call me crazy and all this.
I'd go Zach 1 and Lance close 2.
But listen. Maybe I'll try to change your mind. Just think about this. 7 months ago, this team was a drive away from possibly being in the Super Bowl with Jimmy G. All we heard this whole offseason is Trey is our guy. But all we heard also is that he was struggling. He couldn't read the offense. He was still having rough times. So this is a team that, look, Jacksonville is still in rebuild. The Jets are still in rebuild.
No one cares about Jacksonville. More people in London care about the Jaguars in Jacksonville at this point.
Jacksonville, they're in rebuild. I get it. Trevor Lawrence, we'll see what happens with Trevor Lawrence. He needs to take another step too, because all we heard great things coming out. Well, we'll see what happens. Chicago's just a mess. The Patriots, they don't know if they want to have Joe Judge or Matt Patricia, a guy that runs quarterback sneak, and then they want to have a defense coordinator run offensive. To me, Trey Lance faces the most pressure because the 49ers by far are the best team of the 5 quarterbacks that got drafted of those teams. They're expected to win a Super Bowl. They have a Super Bowl roster. If Trey Lance struggles and what they gave up for, boy, oh boy, what is San Fran going to do? At least the Jets, you still got all that draft capital. You could, if Zach Wilson doesn't deliver, okay, you keep him on the roster, and guess what? Trade up for one of the, maybe a Stroud, Bryce Young. I don't know how big of a fan I am. Maybe a Will Levis, those type of guys. But to me, out of those 5 quarterbacks, I know it sounds crazy, but I would say Trey Lance, just because of the situation he's in, the best situation, and this was a team that was not too far from being in the Super Bowl.
Right, but I just think this, like, just being in the New York market, just the media attention, and just the playoff drought adds to that. And the Jets fans, they've been so desperate for a franchise quarterback that if there's any sign that Zach's not the guy, and for people that also disagree with me too, like I keep saying like, oh, I want Joe Douglas pick the next quarterback. He made the right decision on Sam Darnold. Like, comparison between the two, I've seen more flashes from Zach than I really ever seen from Sam. And look, Zach's biggest problem right now is the health at this point. And yes, even if he plays all 17 games and you're a Jet fan, I still would be a little bit wary going long term with the health. But overall, I just look at this Greeny Green. People are actually banging on Trey Lance winning MVP.
It's funny. Ted has actually said he thinks he's a dark horse to win MVP. He thinks he's going to have a great season. We'll see. That's what I would say. We'll just have to see. He's got the pieces.
They got to use his athleticism, though. I think you need to kind of do what they did with Josh Allen a lot. Lamar. People forget, like, Josh Allen, like, the first 2 years, like, how much running he did, to the point where I'm like, this kid, like, I don't know how long his career is going to be, because he's just diving headfirst into piles. And I'm like, Jesus.
He's still doing it. That's the thing.
He's still doing it. I mean.
And now he's more valuable than ever.
Oh, yeah, like, especially with that contract. I am curious to see, though. I know everyone riding the Bills hype train, but I would pump the brakes a little bit on the Bills. Well, a big reason is because of the Giants, because I do think Brian Dable was instrumental to.
Do you not think Dorsey can? You don't think Dorsey can?
I'm not
just
saying
continue what the path that they've been on right now.
I mean, I don't necessarily. I think that they'll still be a great team. I still think they're easily going to win the AFC East. But for everyone saying, "Oh, they're in the Super Bowl this year," I would think
Dable's impact was just that significant.
It could be. Well, we will see. We will see. I mean, we forget too that they had a lot of continuity, and this is the problem when you have a great team. Is great organizations, you have to be able to find the pieces, because when you become a good team, everyone's going to pick and choose off your team. I mean, Kansas City's been in the minority because for some reason Eric Bieniemy will refuse. They won't hire him. I don't know why.
Well, they're going to wait. Andy Reid's going to retire soon enough,
right? So,
and then he'll take the helm.
But I was just saying with the Bills, like, now all of a sudden too, you're going to start getting into that part of the dilemma where now you're paying Josh Allen. He's not on the rookie wage scale. So are you going to be able to draft as well? And the Giants took one of their best drafting pieces away from that front office. So I'm really the Bills are still going to be a great team. Bills are probably still going to be top 2 in the AFC. They probably have a good shot at the number 1 seed, just because, you know, the AFC West, the AFC North is pretty much going to cannibalize each other. The only thing is, like, if somehow the Colts or the Titans, like, they might just sneak in the DMs again to the number 1 seed, just because, like, their division's so bad. Like all of a sudden, if Derrick Henry plays 17 games, they'll just slide in at like 13-4, and it'll be like, wait a minute, how the hell did this happen? Where's your fake ID card?
Where'd you come from?
Yeah, Greeny Green. Will Josh Allen progress or regress? I still think he's still going to progress, but I am curious to see the type of progression that he will have. And if
my question is to you, how much higher can he go? Because last year, especially that, just think about that divisional game. And I know people say, well, he didn't get to the FC title game. It wasn't Josh Allen's fault.
Yeah,
certainly was. It was that defense that decided. Yeah, no, it was that defense that decided to prevent defense and leave the middle of the field wide open. It wasn't Josh Allen's fault. He went toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes. If anything, Josh Allen. I mean, that's what I said. If it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers having another great year, Josh Allen could have easily won MVP. So my question to you would be, how much higher can Josh Allen go? Because he was at the top of the game last year.
Absolutely. And that's the scary thing. I think he could go even higher potentially, but we'll have to see, because they've lost some key pieces. And the other big thing that a lot of people sleep on, look, I know everyone's killing Kansas City because they lost Tyreek Hill. I still think they're going to get that production just other ways, because they added a lot of great receivers, but they
still have Patrick Mahomes.
Right. They improved that defense. Kansas City went out and really improved their defense. Like, the Bills still have a very good defense. I understand Von Miller's there, but I just have the suspicion that Miller contract's going to hurt them long term. Like, this year will be great, but down the road, I do wonder.
6 years, 120 mil.
Yeah, I wonder if by year 2, year 3, because they're going to have to start paying some of their corners. They have a lot of good young pieces on that team.
Yeah,
and we'll see. I mean, the Bills front office has been great, but the Giants have
they got Diggs locked up. They got Allen locked up. Those are the 2 most important offensive pieces. And then defense, Tre'Davious White. You got the safeties, Poyer and Hyde, Edmonds. Right. You got some nice pieces there too. So I understand what you're saying.
Well, I'm trying to think with the Bills too. I'm trying to remember what division they're playing this year. I'm going to pull up that schedule really quick, because again, the schedule. If they're playing the AFC West, I know they're playing the They're playing the AFC North. So
oh yeah,
'cause I
because they're
remember that
playing
with the
week.
Jets. Yeah.
I had it written down. Hold
The
on.
Jets play the 4 AFC North teams in the first 4 weeks. That's how I know that. So, which is, I don't know why that worked out that way, but
Can I be honest?
yeah,
Ted was telling me about their schedule,
yeah, not good.
and I expect the Jets to have about maybe one win by the bye week, and then they'll win. I still think they'll win 6 or 7 games because after the bye, I think they have a much easier schedule. But
yeah, I think
that first couple weeks, man.
Oh, it's brutal.
That's rough.
And I've argued that I think it would have.
I don't want to be the bearer of bad news to you and be like. I mean,
it's honest.
Like
I've been saying, optically, they would have been better off the opposite scenario where they, got the easy schedule in the beginning of the year and then the back end. Look, it's going to be tough. The hardest stretch for me for the Jets is the back-to-back weeks where they're on the road to Green Bay and to Denver. I mean, that's just going to be rough. A schlep. I would say the AFC North, though, it's funny because in a weird way, the Jets might be getting the AFC North at the best time because you get the Ravens week 1. They're still trying to figure out their offense. They've lost Hollywood Brown. They've lost some big pieces, and you still have that hangover potentially of the Lamar Jackson contract because that still hasn't been resolved. Week 2, you go to the Browns, who are not going to have Deshaun Watson. Still going to be tough, even with Jacoby Brissett.
Yep.
And then the Steelers, I love their defense, but who's their quarterback? Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky? And then the Jets beat the Bengals last year. Like, I know the Bengals had that great magic carpet ride at the end of last season, and I love Joe Burrow, but I don't love their offensive line still. They improved it.
Really? But La'el Collins, Alex Kappa, and Ted Karras? You don't like it?
I like it, but we'll see.
It's a lot better than what it was last year.
But but it's still going to be in the first month of the season. You're still building a lot of chemistry on that offensive line. So I'm curious to see how they look. Like, I really believe the Jets could come. I think it's a long shot they come out 2-2, but I do think they're going to sneak a win in the first 4.
I think the Steelers,
probably the Steelers game.
I think the Steelers are interesting because, look, there's a reason why Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record. And what I've been hearing out of reports, Kenny Pickett has been getting some first-team reps. I said it earlier. I would let him do it. You know what Mitchell Trubisky is.
Yeah, and with that team, when you have that great defense and that great running game, you want the guy that's going to make the least amount of mistakes. And I think Trubisky gives you the more playmaking ability, but conservatively.
But Pickett's also got that dual threat ability. We've seen him. We saw him a couple times last year in Pitt run the ball, the big plays, the ACC championship game, the fake slide.
Right.
I mean, he's got the ability. I just don't like that he wears 2 gloves.
I know.
Why?
Kenny 2 glove. No, I'm getting there. But I still think that the most intriguing quarterback of last year's class is Malik Willis. Now, again, I think that run he made was overhyped. He had a great throw in the game, but he also missed a couple of open receivers. And even Vrabel after the game said, like, look, he wasn't making the reads. And you have to understand, coming from where he was at Liberty, there was like a 1 read and take off system. So it was going to take a little time. But I do think he's got the most upside of that class. But it is pretty funny, though, because we're talking about like all the different quarterbacks and all the great divisions. And with the Giants schedule, just looking forward to them, like, do you feel like if this team gets off to, like, let's say a 1-3 or 1-4 start, will they be forced to make a change at the quarterback position just to make a change? Because I do think one of the factors that no one talks about with these two teams, and it's apparent because we've been through this, is you can't tell me both owners are getting pissed where we get to October and the stadium isn't filled. You're seeing a lot of guest fans in that stadium. And look, it's not that the Jets and Giant fans aren't passionate. I would argue that they're 2 of the most passionate fan bases in the entire league.
But that's how you know it's gotten to dark times.
Right. So if this team is struggling, do you feel there's a change that they just have to make a Tyrod change just to show that they're willing to make the change from Daniel Jones? And then after this have an interesting trade proposition for you that you might like.
Okay, we'll take a look at it. I think I don't think Daniel Jones is going to start week 1.
Really?
Look, all the reports.
Well,
Tyrod's been getting first team reps. He was getting first-team reps today, and in camp, he's been getting first-team reps. So that's got to be saying something. And my other take is, this isn't the regime that drafted him.
Right.
They can pull the plug whenever they want. He hasn't looked good in preseason. I mean, the one game It wasn't bad. They moved down the field. They looked good, pretty good, but he still had some bad decisions. He hasn't looked good in camp either. I mean, I get, just like you get the reports on Twitter from all the Jet beat writers and stuff like that, just like I get it from the Giants beat writers, he struggles. He just doesn't look good. And that's just something that as Giant fans, you can't go through with that again. If he's still struggling and it's going in the year 4, knowing that this is it, that this could be the possibility of you starting the last time of your entire career, and you're still making those mistakes and still looking not too good, then I want the best guy. And if that's got to be Tyrod, who maybe it's not. I even say it about Miami. If Tua's not playing well, you got Teddy B. You got Bridgewater. You can put him in. You got to put the best guy in.
He can rock the 2 gloves, though. Teddy 2 gloves. I mean,
he's been doing it since college, so I guess he gets a free pass. My thing is that you got to put the best guy on the field. If that's Tyrod Taylor, you're putting Tyrod Taylor in. You're not putting Daniel Jones in because he has more talent. No, you want the best guy that gives you a chance to win. And if that's going to be Tyrod, then that's going to be Tyrod. But that's what I'm hearing, is that he's getting first-team reps. So something to keep an eye on, because the NFL is only a month away. A lot can happen in a month.
But you know what's amazing? Like, we always talk about certain players that get overlooked in the NFL. And, like, people always look like, yeah, Tyrod's a backup. Tyrod's never really been that good. But
it wasn't bad.
No, he has
59, went to the Pro Bowl.
59 touchdowns to 25 interceptions. And let me ask you this. Like, he has started 52 games, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
With a bad Buffalo team. Like, this is 2015 to 2017 Buffalo. Buffalo.
This is like the dark days, like kind of like the Giants.
And last year with the Texans for 6 games, when the Texans basically only had Brandon Cooks to throw to. What do you think his record as a starting QB is?
Slightly over, maybe slightly over 500.
Yeah,
close
20,
to
26, 25, and 1. But if you
were to
really, me, right?
Wow.
But again, like most people would probably assume he's like 5 or 7 games under 500, and you can get away with Tyrod. And one of the other interesting things too is, I know these two teams don't like to trade the Jets and the Giants, but you were talking about the corner situation. One piece that I've been saying that the Jets could do, because they actually have some depth now, is trade some pieces. Now, again, the big one's Denzel Mims. I don't think he's going to fit on the roster.
Oh, if you want to trade Sauce Gardner over, come on, we'll take him.
Well, not Sauce, but because they've brought in DJ Reed, they've brought in Sauce, and a lot of the corners have looked really good in camp. One of the guys I've been saying the Jets should look to trade is Bryce Hall. You know, Bryce Hall, good starting cornerback. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't necessarily love his ball skills. I think he is ideally a good number 2. He's a good guy that's going to have good coverage game. Very good. But the thing that doesn't really separate him is he doesn't have great ball skills. And what I mean by ball skills is he's good at covering, but he's not good at forcing the turnovers. He's not going to get you interceptions. But if you're the Giants, like, I do wonder if the Jets feel like Sauce is going to play, DJ Reed's going to play, and Bryce is, again,
well, you would think
backup.
those would be your 2 guys. You
would
would assume that Sauce is going to be the number 1, and then you probably have DJ as your number 2.
I think DJ is going to be the number 1 this year, because I think just to ease Sauce, what they're probably going to do, if I had to guess, is put DJ on the number 1, put Sauce on the number 2 to help.
Did you see the recent question from Greeny Green? I actually have an answer to that.
Has any QB ever had worse pocket presence than Daniel Jones?
I got the question. He's the all-time biggest bust of all time, Jamarcus Russell.
Well, he also had the worst buffet presence too. I mean, he basically ate himself out of the league. I mean,
Jamarcus Russell. I'll get that, and then DJ.
I always remember the Kirk Morrison story, like on the Rich Eisen show, where basically I'll do the abbreviated version, but if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. You'll laugh, but. Basically, the coaches, it was like the draft day test where they put the dollar bill and the $100 bill in the back of the book.
Bill at the end of the book. Yeah.
They gave him a DVD and they're like, yeah, watch this DVD and tell us what you think. And he came back in and he's like, yeah, I loved all those plays. And they're like, you do realize it was a blank DVD, right? So
God almighty.
Well, it's funny too. Like, we talk about busts, and especially with the Giants and the Jets, like a lot of guys have, especially the last 10 years, been bust. And Mekhi Becton, the term bust has been thrown out around him. I kind of avoid injury bust because I just think it's unfortunate.
Saquon gets the terms sometimes too, my man. So you gotta roll with the punches sometimes. Becton right now has been dealing with a lot of injuries. He was a top 10 pick.
Right. Would you say Saquon is a bust though? Like I think when he's on the field, he has been a
as
solid
of right
player.
now. He's more
as the number 2 pick. I think he's a bust. But like, if you took him at the 15th pick, yeah,
he's more of a bust than he is a star. Right. To answer that, definitely, I wouldn't say he's 100% a bust because he had that incredible rookie season and then he had another 1,000-yard season. But he's closer to being a bust than he is to being a star.
I know. I always feel like a bust is someone like, again, I get the injury debate, but I think like a Vernon Gholston's a bust. Someone that just couldn't, but someone that just couldn't flat out play in the NFL.
I thought he was going to be a stud. Or like D Millionaire.
Oh, D. Well, yeah, that he couldn't play, he couldn't stay healthy. No, the whole Jets draft history, like outside of maybe even 2013, they got Sheldon Richardson in that draft, but then
do you consider Darnold a bust?
I do, because for Darnold, I think it's been pretty clear that Carolina, like everyone was saying, like, oh, like Carolina screwed him, and I was like, look, Carolina had great weapons. Carolina has a decent enough offensive line, and I did remember the first 3 weeks of the season, everyone was going nuts over Sam Darnold, but I did remember even after the Jet game, like outside of the play to Robbie Anderson where the safety fell down, 70% of his yards were checkdowns to Christian McCaffrey. I mean, any quarterback, me and you could just like, here, Christian.
Right? Hey, Christian, here you go, buddy.
Go run 15 yards. So
but that's the thing, like with Daniel, you have enough kind of film to say that's what Darnold was. That's what Darnold is. That's what Daniel Jones is. He's not a quarterback that's going to beat you. He's not a quarterback that is going to scare you in the game plans. It's just how it is. I don't want to be seen as like knocking Daniel Jones because I want him to succeed. But ultimately, what you see on the tape is what you've been seeing on the field every week for 4 years now, going into year 4.
Now, unpopular opinion, like that draft was a tough quarterback draft because you knew Kyler was going 1.
I don't think the Giants needed to take a quarterback there. Ride with Eli one more season, and I would have taken Josh Allen at that time. Josh Allen, the outside backer from Kentucky, not the quarterback. But the thing that screwed him that year was that Justin Herbert was going to be their guy, and he ended up going back to Oregon. That was like their plan B was Daniel Jones, I guess. I never assumed that he was really going to get drafted by the Giants. I thought it was all smoke and mirrors the day before. Oh, the Giants are going to take Jones. I was like, no way, it's not going to happen. They were just in a tough predicament. They should have just built depth in that draft. Ride with Eli one more year, and then go get your quarterback the next season.
Right. Well, it's also like the whole debate I had last year with the Jets. And like, trust me, like on this channel, like we had plenty of fights in the chat about what the Jets would do with the pick. Like there was pretty even, I think most people came around to they had to draft a quarterback with the rookie wage scale no matter what, as opposed to everyone saying, well, you could get a boatload of picks for the second overall pick in the draft. And look, if they got the number 1 pick, it would have been slam dunk. Trevor Lawrence, like no doubt about it. And it was funny. Like I did hear everyone saying, "Oh, the Jets would screw him up. The Jets would screw him up." And then the second Jacksonville gets in there, I haven't heard those comments the last 20.
Well, all we heard is Urban Meyer.
Well, thanks. Urban Meyer's a great influence. He won't fly back on the plane with you and just go to his own bar.
I think the Giants got kind of to finish up with that. The Daniel Jones is. Giants just set themselves back, and I hate to say it because I'm a big fan of them. They took Saquon. They took Saquon number 2 when you're in a quarterback draft. When you're in a quarterback heavy draft, and you got I know could have taken Josh Allen. Did we think Josh Allen was going to pan out to be this superstar? I know Darnold was. Some people were saying Darnold. We don't know what was going to happen with Darnold. Baker went 1. Rosen never made it out under his legs, and Lamar kind of just has proven everybody wrong. Yeah, but in a quarterback heavy class, if you try to trade back, like do what the Jets did. Yeah, trade back with Indy. And
no, they trade up with Indy.
Oh, they traded up with Indy. That's what I'm saying.
To get Sam.
But that's what I'm saying is that if you really wanted a quarterback, or if you wanted to trade back, just taking Saquon really, to be honest, probably was like a move that set the Giants back for a few years. And it's still kind of in the situation right now.
Yeah, but I also think it's tough too because everyone looks back on revisionist history like, oh, why didn't anyone draft Josh Allen? But people forget too with Josh Allen, he was incredibly raw coming out of Wyoming. Like I even said, I thought
very inaccurate. It was
we had the highest upside in that class, but don't forget too, he went to Buffalo. Buffalo has a great coaching staff. Buffalo is the perfect place for him to go.
But when he went
really,
there, they weren't the Buffalo that we have seen now. Like they were
right, but
just
they also
starting
didn't
to
have
build.
expectations. Like
Yeah.
the problem when, and I think you know this, like too, like whenever you're drafted, especially in the New York market, like you are the front page of any town that drafts you. Like let's be honest, any city, you're going to be the guy. But there's a big difference between being the guy in Buffalo than being the guy in New York. Because like the first thing, if you're drafted by the Giants, there's going to be the Phil Sims, there's going to be the Eli Manning comparisons,
and then for the Jets, it's like, are we going to get the
it's
next
always
Joe?
the same. Is it the next Joe? Is it the next Namath? It's like, no, it's the same cycle, and there's so much pressure on those guys, and especially this year too with the Giants. Like I feel like almost with Giant fans, like, and tell me if I'm wrong with this, does it just feel like a little frustrating? Because again, you're seeing this development. I do think you're going to see the Giants take a good step because they have a lot of young pieces, especially on that defense.
I don't think they could go any farther back.
Correct. But does it feel a little frustrating because you look at the division you're in, and especially the conference that you're in with the 7 playoff spots, like if the quarterback position was just even a little bit better, that this could be a playoff team?
I won't go as far as saying they're a playoff team, even with how weak the NFC is. And even if they had I just, like I've been saying from the start, I just need to see some sort of direction and positivity and growth in this franchise, because this is a franchise that has been at the bottom of the barrel for some time now, just like us, or just like all New York fans, New York Jet fans and New York Giant fans. We've been at the bottom of the barrel for quite some time. All we want to see is just some sort of progress, and we want to see some happy days. We don't want to be seeing the dark days of the blue city, the big blue city, the Big Apple, because that's what it's been. Thankfully for the New York Mets and the New York Yankees, they're holding us up right now. But football season's right around the corner.
Maybe not last night, but
and as Giant and Jet fans, the thing is, people get excited for football, and I do too. I'm the happiest fan that football is back. But as a Giant and Jet fan, you're just like, oh boy, here we go again. Is this going to be another long 17 games that we're just going to see them 4-13, 5-12, and picking in the top 5 of the draft again? I mean, that's just been the same story. It's been the same story over and over and over again.
Now, progress can be measured in a lot of ways. I think the obvious one's the record. Giant fans, do you think they're going to measure the success by, like, do we win 6 to 8 games, or is it going to be more like what they're seeing on the field and the record? I won't say the record's irrelevant, because it never truly is irrelevant, but is it more or less, okay, like we're seeing Kayvon Thibodeau taking a big step, we're seeing this offensive line taking a big step. Like if the Giants end up with 5 wins, but you feel like you're seeing a lot of growth, is that better, or will this team be disappointed, or this fan base? Like, again, I know they're going to be disappointed.
There's not much expectations, Noel, as a New York Giant team right now. This is a team that's categorized in the rebuild tier. This is what they've been, and that's fine. I've been saying, and I'll keep saying it again, I just need, if we see growth, if we see Kayvon take that step into, like, okay, we have a legit pass rusher that we can build with for the next 10 to 12 years, I'm running with that. Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal, if those two deliver, then guess what? We have 2 bookend tight ends for the next 10 to 12 years. That's something you could build around. 2 of the most important positions in football, edge rusher and offensive line and tackles.
Right.
If you can have those 2 checked off, that goes a long way. Everything else comes into play. But my thing is, do we have competency? And it seems like this regime is going to get us in the right direction. I don't know if anybody knows, but when Joe Shane went over with Brandon Beane, Buffalo was god-awful for some time. And look what they made Buffalo into. They made them into an AFC power right now. I'm not saying the Giants are going to get to that point right now. It's going to take some time. But if we can see that step in the right direction, I'm all for that. I don't expect the Giants to get to the playoffs. If they do, bravo. I'm jumping in joy. I ain't going to complain. But I just need to see them going in the right direction.
And again, guys, we will definitely have Trevor back on to talk about the Giants throughout this season. And we have
I hope there's more positivity. Question. I hope there's positivity for both of us, buddy.
I do too. And I just put in the comments, guys, you can check it out right now. If you want to follow Trevor and Keys to the City, that is available in the chat right now. So go give them a follow, subscribe, especially if you're a Giant fan. But the final question, I know you're a betting man. The odds this season, over under 7.5 wins for the Giants, which is actually higher than the Jets, which I thought was surprising.
I think it's just because of the AFC. I think really it's
because
the
AFC.
To be honest,
it's basically like it's machine guns versus BB guns. Basically, right now is the AFC versus the NFC. No, like it's just like stupid. Like it's amazing too because it's kind of ironic because like 20 years ago. Remember that dominance of the NFC where like the AFC couldn't win a Super Bowl for like 20 years? I don't think that's ever going to happen again, but it does feel slightly
seems like somebody. Oh, Greeny Green just followed us, so thank you, Greeny Green, for following us on Twitter. You can check us out also on Spotify, iTunes, Facebook, Instagram.
We got Greeny Green to follow you. We gotta get Bluey Blue to follow me. You know,
Bluey Blue.
Yeah, we gotta get Bluey Blue.
If there is a Bluey Blue, me personally,
about
about the Giants to ask that is yeah, I think that if they can get to 7 wins, I think that's like right where I feel like the Giants could be 6-11, 7-10. Between the 5 and 7 range. If they get anything better, then hey, I'm jumping in joy. But 5 to 7 would be the perfect range. The Giants have one of the easier schedules in the league. It's just my whole thing is, what are we going to see from the quarterback play? Can they stay healthy? And can we just see those younger players develop? Evan Neal, Andrew Thomas, Thibodeau, Xavier McKinney, Easy Illusory, even Saquon. Can we see Saquon develop back to being that stud running back that he once was? That's what it comes down to. Wan'Dale Robertson, they have playmakers on this team. That's the thing. They have playmakers on the offense. They have playmakers on the defense. Can this coaching staff and this regime put them in the right place to succeed? And I feel like this is a team that could do that. They did it with Buffalo, and I think they could do it with the New York Football Giants.
Right.
Time will tell on it, though.
Right. And you gave great insight with Tyron. I was just kind of thinking, I was just looking at the Giants' schedule before I let you go. And if you start Tyrod, I mean, I'm looking at the Giants' schedule. I think
they could beat Tennessee in week 1. I don't think Tennessee's a slam dunk win. I mean, Tennessee's got their own issues. Tannehill
Panthers week 2, Cowboys week 3.
That's a
Bears
loss.
week 4.
That could be a win.
Jaguars week 7. Seahawks week 8.
They go to London and Green Bay against Green Bay. That might be a loss. So I mean, I know it's crazy because the Giants, they've been so bad. Right. No, I'm being realistic. If the Giants can put all the pieces together and they can just move the ball, they can stop the run, and they can protect the quarterback, they can go a long way. I'm not saying going all the way to the Super Bowl. Right. I'm not saying they're going to take a Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, if anybody does that, that's just miraculous. But because they have a guy like Joe Burrow, if you can have a quarterback like Joe Burrow, just look at the Cincinnati Bengals, the perfect example. No matter how bad that offensive line was, and no matter there was a team that they might have had their coach get fired at some point last year. They were this close to winning a Super Bowl. If you have the quarterback, that's the most important position in all sports. If you have the quarterback, that's the step in the right direction. The Giants are still in that mode of figuring it out because the quarterback play has been subpar.
If they can somehow get to 2-2 to start the season, I mean, the biggest stretch, there's one stretch of the season that's really going to determine where this team ends up, and I really believe it. It's the games that you could win. And there's a stretch in there, Jaguars, Seahawks, Texans, Lions.
Bears. I mean, those are all possible winnable games.
Right. I mean, they're there. So, and the fact that you brought Tyrod, like, look, this Giant offense, they don't necessarily need to score 35 points because I think their defense is a lot better. If you get Tyrod, you don't get the mistakes, and he makes a play or two in a game. Like, look, I don't think they're going to beat teams with better quarterbacks, but in those games where you have young teams or bad teams, the Giants
just got to score more than your opponent. That's all you got to do. And the other thing is, I was going to say, we're talking about, that could be a winnable game. All the Texans fans and the Giants that see all the people saying that, they're like, they're playing the Giants. That's a win for us. They're saying the same thing. That's what's happened. Hey, we've gotten to that point as Giant and Jet fans that it's like, this looks like this is going to be a win for us.
Yeah, that's always the case. And again, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you, Trevor, for joining us here.
No, my man. Thank you so much, brother.
Of course, give him a follow on Keys to the City. That's Keys to the City. The link is in the chat right now to give him a follow, especially if you love Giants content. Also, give us a follow here. You can check us out on Twitter at Rich Sports Talk and here on YouTube. Subscribe. Join our community page. You know I have a bunch of fun and crazy polls in there, and especially with the Jet polls, you know that they're coming. Especially as we get through the season. You know, I say this is a lot cheaper than therapy. I mean, I had to talk a lot of you guys off the ledge Friday night. So, but, so much more to cover.
Soon we're going to be maybe losing our minds in the next month, bro.
As long as we don't lose our hair, I think we'll. As long as we don't lose the hair, I think we'll.
I don't know if I can lose my hair. Knock on wood. I don't know if I'm gonna lose my hair.
Yeah, so it's mine's definitely grayer than I attribute a lot to the Jets. That's what happens when being.
That's what the difference between being a Giant. Because look, at least we got this. At least we got a Super Bowl championship. We got 2 of them in the past, but it's been a long time. It's been long.
Yes, it's been a long time since the Jets won, but it only took us 3 tries to win a Super Bowl, I guess. So I guess that's our claim to fame. But again. Thanks, Trevor, so much for joining us. Give him a shout out, guys. Give him a follow, and we'll see you here on Rich Sports Talk. Have a good one, guys.
See you guys.